poem by my little buddy, Rich Orloff. And I don't know how I got on his mailing list, but he comes up with something. It's called A Prayer for Revelation. I pray for revelation, to see what I haven't seen, to go beyond my limited beliefs, to be consoled by a love that I did not have the courage to even trust, but still a love that I yearn for. I'm scared to yearn. It's as if I've been trained to expect yearning not to be answered. So here I am, no more, no less than just me, always prepared to be judged instead of embraced. Just me. Release me from my prison of my thoughts, I say, and the jail cell of my fears. And when I return from an inspired moment, let the nuggets of that experience stay in my pocket and feel warm in my hands, so they may comfort me on my journey forward. So the nuggets of those moments. Despair and hope. Well, Beverly kind of teed up despair and hope pretty well for me. It's like she did most of my talk, so I'll make this short. So despair is it's about as bummed out as you can be. I think that's the best way to put it. It's that place where you get where there's just doesn't seem like there's any way out. That place that, and sometimes I think it's in depression or bouncing off of depression. It's that place where you lose belief that there's something out there that can get you out of this thing, or that I can get myself out of it. Hope on the other side is the state of mind that we look out there and we believe and desires that something's going to happen, and just know and expect it. It's going to be there. It's going to happen. It's that excitement of that hope is. Now, they're not opposites like light and darkness. These guys, this hope and despair thing, I call it a divine paradox, and that's the position we're going to talk about today. Paradox is that one thing happens, it can't happen. You can't have the two things happening at the same time. A divine paradox says just the opposite. There are two opposite things that are held in common because there's something common about them, and they can occur in that moment. So in that context, despair is hope turned inward, inside towards the condition, whatever is bumming you out, whatever that condition is. It could be a loss, a major grief, something going on. That despair takes you there and turns and focuses on that. Hope, on the other side, turns it around and turns it and opens it up into a future, so that I can see that this too shall pass, that I'm going to walk through this some way or another, that something's going to make it happen. So that's the context that we're going to play with a little bit here. Hope and despair require one spiritual faculty, one of the 12 powers. We all have it, and they have it in common. Imagination. So you think about, how does that work? Despair is use of my imagination to disastrophize. Something's going bad, and all I can see is it getting worse or staying as bad. And there is no way, nothing's going to make that go away. Nothing's going to be better. Hope on the other side is using your imagination for the other side of that. That, hey, this thing is going to turn around, and it's going to be out there. It's going to be the light and love and all the things that I'm missing in the despair. Both of them require imagination. So, and guess who gets to control our imagination? We do. because our imagination is basically our thoughts. And if we can imagine as bad as we can imagine just in a state of despair, or if we can imagine as great as your greatest hope is, we can control that. That's one of our gifts that we have, the power of actually being a human. So we'll talk about that as we go along on this journey of hope and despair. So they both require imagination. They both need the ability to envision something. They both need the ability to long for something, or the ability to sense that the future is not yet visible. In the despair side, the future is not yet visible because it's ugly and it's going to get worse. It's a belief that despair is a belief that the good that you long for is not even reachable. It isn't going to happen. A faith in the permanence of pain, trauma, and the drama life has. It's imagination, I love this one, rehearsing that the situation or condition cannot be overcome and there is no way out. Our imagination is rehearsing that over and over in our heads. But it's really about our ego on the despair side. The ego is trying to get a story that we're not good enough, strong enough, powerful enough, have the ability enough to do something about where we're at. Hope, on the other side, comes from a different point of view, and we'll get to that. The paradox is that the very capacity for us to be in great despair is the same capacity that we get to be in great hope. And it is turning that coin over. How do we do that? We'll figure that out here. So hope, what it's not this kind of Pollyannish optimism, wishful thinking, or denial in any kind of difficulty. Hope is something greater than that. It's more like, well, from a metaphysical sense, it's turning our consciousness around. Coming from it, again, looking at our thought process and our consciousness around whatever's going on and seeing if there isn't something to hold on to. It's the whispering, I think, of the Christ within, that this isn't the end of my story. And that this story I don't have to do by myself. I've got a divine partner in this whole thing that I can lean on and grasp and help get me through whatever this despair condition is. So it is, hope is the condition that, let's see, that the final word is something that appearances don't have. The appearance does not have the final word over the outcome of my story. That I don't have to live from the conditions, the appearances that I see right now. I can live from the conditions and experiences that I envision for myself in the future. In fact, that's what all of this manifestation and prosperity consciousness is about, is stepping into being what I want to be, and then working my way to it, as opposed to going through a process that first I got to have this, and then I need to do this, and then I can be that. Prosperity consciousness is about, this is what I'm going to be, and all I have to do is stand there and know. Here's a good example. Jacques, my friend Jock, and some of you know him, some of you don't, wanted to be a pirate, a privateer, a pirate. And when he was 5 years old, and he knew he was going to be a pirate. He had no question in his mind he's going to be a pirate. He had no idea how to be a pirate, other than he wanted to be a pirate. He just wanted to be on the seven seas, doing whatever pirates do. Fast forward in his life till he's about 20, and he decides if he's going to be a pirate, he needs a boat. This is a condensed version of his life, by the way. He needs a boat. So he and his then wife decided, well, if we're going to have a boat, we got to go find, where do you find a boat? And it needs to be a big boat. It's going to be a pirate boat. It's got to be big, right? I mean, it can't be a little boat. So they went over to Finland in Norway, and they found this scow that had been used for hauling riprap up and down the coastline. 136 feet long, stem to stern. And he saw this scow, now, never ever having drafted, been on a sailing vessel, so he knew what a boat looked like anyway. And boom, in his mind's eye was a pirate ship. And all that needed to be done is completely be rebuilt because it wasn't a sailing vessel, it was a powerboat. This hull just needed to be fixed, and it would be made into a pirate boat. 2.5 years later, they launched it. And that boat was the Black Pearl in the Pirates of the Caribbean. So, but it started not with, I got to have a boat, and then I'm going to have to fix it, and then I'm going to do that. That's not how it was at all. I'm going to be a pirate. And all the rest of it, the universe goes, okay, pirate, this is where we're going. And so away he went. So that's the power that we have within us and holding that beingness. I went way off track here. So back to this divine paradox. So despair says there is no path forward. Ever been to that place where there's no path forward? Hope says a path exists, though I can't see it quite yet. And then divine truth steps in and says the path is within you, and it unfolds to you as you turn towards spirit. Eric Butterworth and Wayne Dyer and others would say there is a spiritual solution to every problem, every despair, every obstacle. They say that despair is fear-based. And fear-based generally, if it's fear, it generally comes from ego. That's generally where the genesis is. But it's fear-based. And it is basically facing away from the divine, basically saying, well, I've got to do this myself, my ego says. I got to do it all by myself. And you don't have the ability, obviously, to do anything about it, so you're stuck. Hope, on the other side of it, is love-based. And it's basically turning towards the divine, who is all love, and saying, okay, help. I need some help here, partner. Let's get on with this thing here. So there is a solution to every problem from a spiritual standpoint, and we just need to be able to open ourselves and be able to do that. And then the Course in Miracles says, when we make that pivot from ego to the divine, from fear to love, we create a miracle. The Course in Miracles, that is the miracle, making that pivot. So that's part of our journey here as we go through life, is making that pivot and really knowing that we have this partner. You think about the Jesus story of the crucifixion and resurrection. So the tomb was the despair, rolling the stone away from it, that was the hope, And what's popped out of it was the resurrected Christ within each one of us, the demonstration of that. So that's kind of a good way to kind of look at it. So I went back and did some research in Scripture to take a look at how this paradigm thing works, this hope and despair. And if you bear with me, we'll walk through a couple of scriptural stories about that. One is in the Psalms, the book of Psalms. This is David. He's been writing the Psalms. A lot of those Psalms are about despair, these crises of the heart. And he takes these things in poetry to God, sometimes questioning where is God and how is this going to work, and or taking my faith, I don't have enough faith to get through this thing. So in the 22nd Psalm, he writes this. You might hear this first line. I didn't realize that this was actually written by David. It was my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from me? So far that my cries are of anguish. And doesn't that feel like a little bit of despair there? I mean, you're down on your knees going, what's happening here? Or somehow God has left you. And then he turns around in the 23rd Psalm, and here's the answer to that. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff comfort me. Fear and hope. So in the book of Job, I think most of us know the story of Job. He got in this wrestling match with God and the devil, and everything was taken from him. His family, everything was taken from him. And ultimately, he said this, this is not who you are. You are not the God that I have been worshiping. So what happened to you? And what's happening to me? And why is this happening to me? And then God turned around and said, well, Job, we're having this test here. And it's a test of your faith. And your faith has set you free. And Job's faith restored all of those things back to him and more. And then finally, the book of the Kings, book 1 and 2, Elijah. So Elijah was a prophet, and he was in, well, I don't even remember where it was. Anyway, the people of Israel had started worshiping false idols, and a bunch of other things were going on, and he went out to straighten them out. So he did. There was all sorts of signs and miracles and things that he did that kind of straightened these folks all out. What he was really after was a regime change. That was his thing, is he wanted to turn this whole thing around. And there was a Queen Jezebel who wasn't convinced that her regime ought to be changed. In fact, she said, well, maybe I'll just kill you instead, and then I don't have to worry about all this stuff. So he flees. He's gone. He's doing all of God's work, and he finally got rid of the idols and all this kind of stuff. And he shows up, and he says, he finally crashes physically underneath a broom tree, whatever a broom tree is. And he says this. He says, I've had enough. Take my life. Dark night of the soul. There is no way out. And in that place under the broom tree, this chariot of fire comes down, whisks him away, exalts him into heaven, and that was the end of the story of Elijah. So there is hope, even in those dark moments. It's kind of like everyday life, though. Look at the 22nd and 23rd Psalms. And that really just rocked with me. Yeah, I've had those days where, where's God, right? Well, there's a saying, where's God, who moved? So it's really, I need to move and turn myself back towards God so I can experience the 23rd Psalm as I walk in through those shadows in my life. Jimmy Buffett said this. He said, there's a fine line between Saturday night and Sunday morning. And the same thing goes with fear and despair, or hope and despair. There's a fine line. We just got to make that line happen. Viktor Frankl wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. I don't know if anybody's read that. I recently read it. He was a psychologist, a Jewish psychologist, and was put into a concentration camp during World War II. His family, he and his family were taken. His family were all lost to him. In fact, they were taken away from him. He didn't know if they lived or died, and they didn't live. He was in the concentration camp for 3 years. I mean, horrific things were going on, both to him and to his other folks. But he discovered some things while he was there. He noticed that people that had lost everything, first of all, they had lost everything, including the clothes on their backs. But when he witnesses the people that started losing hope and losing faith and not finding a reason to live, those were the ones who ended up in the mass graves. And that's where their names are written. Frankl observed that there had to be, there was a way that people found to find a reason to live. And he found it, first he looked at as this whole thing about choice and about to be able to choose how you thought about things. And that was a real difficult one. I mean, obviously, I can't even imagine how horrific that would be. But he said that people would find their why to live, if only that they can choose how they responded to a circumstance. And it would obviously not a very good circumstance. But in your mind, you could respond in a certain way. Physically, you may choose to look differently, but at least in your mind, you can choose how you want to respond. You want to respond from hatred, or you want to respond from some other position. So that why kept those folks alive. Then he went on to say that about suffering. And he said, there's suffering in all life. Everybody gets to go through suffering, some a lot, some a little. But suffering is just part of the human condition. And what he said is that those that found how they could find some kind of meaning out of their suffering made the suffering not be suffering anymore. There was some kind of meaning that was going on. And then he said, what we did is what we looked at things that we could point to where we had a glimpse that the world really was a beautiful place. A flower growing out of the mayhem. Somebody helping you, or you helping somebody else. A synchronicity. Maybe you saw a sunrise and just realized that, hey, there's something here. There's something bigger. And then he said at the end that, and I'll quote him, in the end, we are all divine beings, and that cannot be taken away. When we finally got to that place, then life had a reason for being and a reason for living. And those are the people that survived that Holocaust. So many of you know my story about going to Unity Village in the Kama. Does anybody not know it? So I don't have to go over it again? Okay. So that was kind of working on my own personal time of despair and a dark night of the soul thing. And I got to the village and I found the Kama. So peace be still. It's in this peace chapel and there's this peace be still. And I was in there for about a good half hour or so, and then all of a sudden I saw that there was a comma there. I never saw there was a comma before. I thought it was peace be still, one word in one sentence with no comma. And I found a comma. Well, it wasn't just another keystroke on the typewriter or the painting. It turned out to be, for me, a kind of a divine revelation, this comma. I had never thought about a comma like I thought about that moment. And it was about pausing. So it's peace, be still. And then I thought about what I was involved with, and I thought, God, I don't have a comma in my life. So my mode of operation was I just power my way through. I'd work harder, do more, keep more busy, and somehow it would just bust my way through, being the bull in the china shop. I'd find the door eventually. But that comma thing just really dawned on me. It's like, wow, I don't have a comma. Maybe I should put a comma in my life. And maybe I should slow it down and maybe even open up to a greater awareness and maybe let spirit in. Who knows? Maybe that might work, right? So it was just an amazing juxtapose from the position I had taken in that moment. And as I went on through the rest of my existence, I was able to find that comma and actually use it, not only finding it. I think maybe sitting in there, staying out of the cold, finding this comma, and said, and then having this intuition about what the heck this comma was all about for my life, I figured maybe I should keep that comma in the back of my mind as I go through my rest of my life and see how that turned out. So far, so good. So I'm keeping the comma. So that gets us over to here. So hope and despair. Hope says this is the end. Despair says this is the why. And God says I'm already in whatever comes next. Hope is the cry. Despair is the cry, hope is the answer, and God is the one who holds both in those loving arms. So may we each, whenever we get into some kind of despair, even if you're kind of just numbling on despair, just turn it into hope. Find that place where you can say, because this too shall pass. There is no doubt that this too shall pass. And remembering that all things work together for good for those who love God. And so if you stand in that place and use spirit as your guidepost or your partner, then all things work together for good. And maybe we each have one of those moments. Let us pray. In this prayer, I'm going to read a blessing called the Blessing of Hope. May the dark night never frighten you, for it is only the cloak in which the dawn gathers its strength. May the ache in your chest become a holy bell, calling you back to the one who walks beside you in every valley. May despair never convince you that you are alone, for even in the deepest hollow, the presence keeps vigil. May hope rise in you like a tide returning to the shore, slowly, steady, unstoppable, carrying the promise that nothing is ever lost in God. May your heart remember that the path you cannot see is already unfolding under your feet. And may the Christ light within you shine through every shadow, guiding you home to the truth of who you are and your being. And so it is. Amen. Blessings to all. Okay, I think we should rise, huh? Shall we rise? Rise up. I do believe we have a song coming up, right? What do we got here? Okay, this is one you're going to get. Yep, I know this one.